Chris Renko alongside Richard Skinner here. Skinny, the most spirited practice of training camp by far. We saw on a scale of a disagreement to an all-out brawl, I'd say kerfuffle, scuffle, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think I called it a dust-up. I think one of them was a dust-up.
Good, yeah.
One of them was a kerfuffle. It didn't get the full-scale brawl. I thought one was going to because everybody started charging in, and I think cooler heads prevailed and said, all right, let's just nip this in the bud at the moment. Not a big deal on the scale of everything. You know, when all is said and done, these things happen in practices. It gets heated. The offense talks because it thinks it's scored. The defense is going to say, hey, you know, we tagged you and we would have tackled you. And so that's the thing. There's no tackling, so there's no clear-cut play over it except for the whistle blowing. And I think that's when things get overheated. And all it takes is one to turn into two, to turn into three, to turn into how many ever. And today it turned into four.
I had the same disagreements with my siblings and neighbors. We play tag, like, you know, freeze tag. Hey, I got you. No, you didn't. You know, that's kind of the same thing we had here, though. The one big one that I think you're referring to was, Ted Karras said it was an maybe overdone play, as in, you know, it was a run play to the sideline. He kind of took Logan Wilson down. Defense didn't like that. Ted said he didn't care. It ended with B.J. Hill ripping off Alex Kappa's helmet. And BJ, I'm not going to say what he was going to do because I wasn't in his head, but it looked like he was going to throw it or something. Thankfully, Amarius Mims and a coach came and grabbed his hand and said, don't even do that. But when we talked to the guys in the locker room afterwards, they all like that because it gets a little edge. It's football, as Jermaine Pratt said, and they kind of need that because an opposing team's walking in here on Saturday.
Yeah, I was a little surprised when we talked to Dan Pitcher, the offensive coordinator, after practice because you would think he's anti-defense and didn't like the way they reacted to it. And he said, no, we're trying to build an edge as a team. We need this. He thought the spirit of the practice was great. And he said, you know, when guys are competitive and all these guys are, you're going to have things like that happen. So even the offensive coach, when the defense was getting involved with this, he didn't seem to mind it whatsoever. And I think, again, it's probably a good thing, and it's probably an even better thing that Thursday's practice inside the stadium will probably be light, and then they get to play somebody else on Saturday.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everyone, media members, fans, players, we're sick of watching the same thing over and over again. Let's have a game to talk about, which we will on Saturday. Of note today, Trey Hendrickson back in practice, hadn't been practicing since the first one. They said it's a chest contusion. Him back significant, I think, for the defense.
Yeah, I honestly thought we probably wouldn't see him the rest of this week because I don't think he plays on Saturday. Sam Hubbard probably won't play on Saturday. Trent Brown won't play on Saturday. We're supposed to see most of the starters. So I just thought maybe they would, you know, ramp Trey up next week. But for him to get out there at least in some individual stuff and be a part of it, he was not part of the team stuff today. I think that was a good step. And then again, tomorrow I think it'll probably be a light practice, so that won't matter a whole lot. And then maybe next week, get him a practice before you go to Chicago, and then let him take part in that joint practice in Chicago next Thursday.
Those joint practices become more and more important because these preseason games, you don't see so many starters. If you had to put a thumb on it right now, a couple days before, how many starters do you think we'll see and how many plays they get?
I think we'll see them all, but the guys that are that I mentioned. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I'm forgetting that's not healthy. I don't think there is. I think everybody else is healthy will play.
And Jamar Chase.
That's one for sure. So probably four starters that won't play. I'd say the offense gets anywhere from 7 to 10 snaps. I think if they had a 3 and out, they'd probably run them back out there again. I think if they had a nice 7-8 play series, even if they didn't score, that would probably be enough. And that's probably the same for the defense. And to your point, they'll get a lot of snaps in those joint practices. It is a little bit more of a controlled environment. There's not a lot of live tackling involved, so you're not fearing injury as much as you would be in a preseason game. But I do think, obviously, this is important to Zach Taylor to do that this year. I think it's important for Joe Burrow to get hit, too, and I think he knows that. He's kind of talked about that a little bit. He's looked more and more sharp as camp has gone along, as he gets that wrist better. But I think the next test for him is, how does he land? What is it like when he gets hit? What's it like throwing on the run against another team? He did it really good today against his own team. So I think all those things are important for them. And I think a handful of plays, whatever that would be, 7 to 10-ish is probably perfect.
It's kind of amazing to me because I'm thinking back to the last time, not saying that we were worried, but we noticed that Burrow wasn't on when he had one of his worst practices since becoming a pro. Since then, he's been absolutely lights out, and it's like he's back to normal. I don't know, was there a switch flipped? Was it just a mental thing that he finally got over? But he looks like he's back to normal.
Well, you remember the year he came back from the knee surgery, and he really struggled with some early practices in throwing the ball. He admitted to being nervous with bodies around him. And it was almost that day he spoke truth to power of, you know what, I'm going to speak this into existence. I'm going to get it out of my head, and then I'm just going to go practice like normal. And from that point forward, it was Joe Burrow. he talked the other day and was asked about some of the practice stuff. He said, some days I'm working on check downs, and some days maybe he is, but maybe it's also him going, maybe I am checking it down too much. Maybe I do need to let this rip a little bit more. And then Friday, lo and behold, he throws back-to-back great throws, great deep ball throws, one on the run. And today I thought it was his best practice by far of the season, the way he threw the ball. Some tight window throws. He missed a couple of throws, but I'm not expecting 100% accuracy. I don't think anybody should. But he was really good today, really sharp in tight windows, great on the run in scramble situations. And I think that's what you're hoping for, is just to see him keep progressing. And now the next step is what happens when he gets contacted on Saturday.
I thought Burrow really sharp, but overall the defense very impressed. That final 11-on-11 period, they were able to break up a bunch of passes. Andre Josevich got sandwiched between Vaughn and Jermaine Pratt. They knocked it away. I'm blanking on some other plays, but there were multiple times that the defense was able to rip some balls out. Tanner Hudson at the very end, Mike Hilton able to break up a touchdown there. I think a really good sign for the defensive backfield, which again, young guys, you're expecting some guys maybe with not a lot of experience in different positions, able to just bend, not break, which we've seen them do time and time again.
Yeah, and I know there's one ball that fans who are watching this that may have seen it was a deep ball to T. Higgins that he caught that Jordan Battle could have decleated him on. So there was a little part of discretion, was a little part of the valor there at points of that practice. And that's what sometimes is so hard when you see great plays made. You look and you go, well, Jordan could have hit him really hard there. But to your point, a couple of the plays the defense made that were within the bounds of things, like knocking the ball away from Tanner Hudson. Because from my vantage point, I actually put my head down for a second thinking touchdown. I look back up and I see everybody signal incomplete and realize that Mike had stripped the ball away. That's kind of what you're trying to do in those circumstances, and Mike did a great job of it.
All right, we're almost there. I do want to end on this because it's an interesting conversation. That team up north in Northeast Ohio just releasing, the Cleveland Browns, they just released that they are building a multi-billion-dollar stadium in Brook Park, which is by the airport, not in this Cleveland city limits. It looks like state-of-the-art and another team, not just another team in the NFL, but it's a team in your own backyard getting it. And I'm looking at Paycor Stadium, which has gotten a couple coats of paint, and it seems fine, but it's not a multi-billion-dollar indoor stadium with an entertainment district. Do you think, is this going to make the Brown family, the ownership, think about the future because that lease is coming up? Speculate with me. Dream wildly.
Yeah, no, I mean, 2026 is the date that the lease is up, and there's been contentious, battling between the county and the club over certain things. I do think something gets done. I think the county will work hard to make sure of that, but if push comes to shove, and to your point, where the Browns are going to go, they're going to have their own entertainment district. It's theirs, raking all the money from it. You have friendly people in Warren County that I think would be willing to do this with land, and friendly people in Boone County that would be willing to do this with land. And it gives you, if you're the Bengals, maybe a bargaining chip when all is said and done. And so I do think that part gets interesting. I don't want to call them the Boone County Bengals yet, even though I live in Boone County. And I don't know what I call them if they're in Warren County. I guess they'd still have to be the Bengals, but I have to come up with something more clever than that. I don't think that that's the case, but to the point of it, Chris, it gives you some bargaining power. And we're seeing teams that are trying to do this a little bit more, of going to their own area, creating their own district. Now, they were wise when they put these two stadiums down here, this one obviously in Great American Ballpark, to make sure in the process they left open an area where they could put an entertainment district in. But that's not controlled by the teams. I mean, this is a team that can go control their whole area, control their hotels. If they get tax breaks out there, I don't know the whole Cleveland ins and outs. I know probably as much as you know about this, and you probably even know more than I do. But they're going to control a good chunk of this. I mean, it's something you got to ponder for sure.
For a franchise that's looking for money to pay a lot of people, it would seem like that's a pretty big revenue stream, because we know how Bengals fans get before games.
Or line your own pockets.
That too. All right, one more practice before the first preseason game. He's Richard Sooner. I'm Chris Rankel, taking you through another day at Bengals training camp.